Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Namaste, namaste. And in this series of extraordinary female global soul stewards, I have the most enchanting, beautiful lady sitting, waiting to reveal her extraordinary story to us. So I say welcome, welcome to you, namaste, and also to Anja, namaste, namaste.
Oh, thank you so much. It's a blessing and an honor to be here. Thank you.
Oh, bless you. Thank you so much. I'm deeply, deeply touched by your presence. It's so exquisite, as we will see, ladies and gentlemen, as Anja reveals the wonder, the depth of her exquisite being. So let me share with you her bio. Today, Anja is a Danish mystic mediating God's love into the world. Yet, for more than a decade, Anja was one of the best-known TV radio personalities in Denmark, hosting her own talk show as well as almost every other kind of TV entertainment. And in consequence, she was voted best female TV host. And then, in 2011, she fell into a deep depression that changed her life forever. And after 6 months of painful darkness, she began to re-enter the world completely transformed. Her heart was opened, and she found herself in a state of pure, unconditional love, where she suddenly saw life from the perspective of divine love. Anja knew that she was no longer in charge of her own life, but was called to be the servant of something infinitely bigger. And as she surrendered into the loving guidance of the divine, love took her on a 7-year journey to learn and evolve into the experience and understanding of God, expressed through love. Anja represents a new form of Nordic mystic, approaching spirituality in a highly unique way, where everything but the pure and simple connection with the divine is stripped away. Anja is an award-winning author of the Book of Solace, Love and Light for Dark Days, and we will include your website on the screen later. So welcome, 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 welcome. That was an extraordinary experience. Did you feel, as you were going through your TV personality career, did you feel that there was something on the horizon for you?
No, that's the short answer. I always had such a deep envy for people who uh, knew what they were here for. So
Mm,
people who were passionate, people who were driven, people who had something that they really burned for. And I never had that. I just went with the flow. I became a TV host by coincidence, or what we should call it. And I just said yes sometimes and no sometimes, but I was really longing to be passionate about something or to have that meaning.
mm,
So no, I wouldn't say that I had any idea what was coming.
mm,
I was just no living my life. I I it came to a place where I was not thriving. You know, I before I went down with the depression, I went down with a period of stress, and I did feel
mm,
things were beginning to change or to shift, and I did begin to feel a longing to live a different kind of life.
mm,
But that was about it, I think. I had
mm,
no idea what was in store.
mm. It's extraordinary, isn't it, that we meet these huge corridors of light in our lives in a completely unsuspecting or unexpected way.
Mm.
And then a flare goes up and we see everything just as we need to see it. I mean, it's an absolute naked truth. And we
Yes.
realize that there's a to go through to change the whole vibrational frequency of what our lives are all about. And so for you, the adrenal rush of in support of your career then began to have a mitigating force on your life physiologically. And so you needed to give yourself a break from that level of stress, presumably, and you sank into what was described as depression.
Well, I would actually describe it as, no, I have this idea, or I would say it is my experience, that when we are too separated from who we are here to be, then at some point life will come and it will shake us into remembering. It will just shake us like a tree, just allowing everything that is not aligned with who we are supposed to be to fall off. And I think that is what happens in every life crisis, whether it's depression, it's illness, it's divorce, it's grief, whatever kind of life crisis. I really believe it is life shaking us into remembering who we are. And then typically what we do, because I have had many life crises before this depression, what usually happens is the minute we are through the life crisis, we do everything in our power to get back to who we used to be. We want to get back to normal as quick as possible and put back all the armors and all of the masks and all the stuff that we carry around. And what happened with this depression was, I think I had just reached a point where I couldn't do that again. When I came out of this depression, I had some experiences that really showed me the beauty of being in the world in this really, really raw and naked way, left, completely vulnerable after this big shake. And I began to see the beauty in it. And there was just a part of me that knew that there was no going back, and that the only way forward was trying to find out, how can I be in this world as this version of me.
Beautifully put. Beautifully put. When we go into the wilderness, which inevitably we need to, because there is so much about our lives that are superficial, where we're doing to keep in contact with the party line, with normality, as you were saying. And when we go into the wilderness, what some people call the long dark night of the soul, I mean, that was originally where Meister Eckhart and St. Teresa of Avila, the great Christian mystics, described it as that, which was for them a form of spiritual madness, where we would be, if we needed it, looked after by mystics. So we would go to the nuns or the monks, and they would hold us in that space without doing anything, so that we could feel, oh, well, something about me is secure. But while I go deep into this space, and there are great demons in that space, aren't there, as we go deep into the wilderness or deep into the sort of lagoons that are there, the huge. I know that Gerard Manley Hopkins, who was an extraordinary writer, poet at the end of the 19th century and the beginning of the 20th, said, oh, the mind has mountains no man fathomed. So we go deep into the space, and we meet our demons, and we realize that whatever we do with them, whether we have conversations with them or we tussle with them, that suddenly we begin to see that on the other side of the darkness there is this extraordinary light. And if we have the courage, we stay there until we deep into the light, and then the light overcomes, meaning takes over us, and we are born again, we are resurrected. That's how I see it. But I also love the image of what you were sharing with us of the tree of life shaking, shaking, shaking us.
Mm,
And I think we're gradually learning, those of us who are initiated into the devotion of spirit and the devotion of the divine, that we're realizing that this is something that we can relinquish ourselves to, that we can surrender and yield to, that it
mm,
is necessary to get to the gold, as Rumi says, the gold dust in the center of the fire.
mm. I um, I have a great friend who put something into words that are really at the essence of my belief when it comes to all of this. And she just put it so clearly. She said it so clearly. She said, the darkness and the light wants the same. The darkness and the light wants the same. To me, everything is God. There is nothing that is outside of God. And God is present as love. And love to me is the highest good of all. It is insisting without compromise on the highest good of all. And God, as love, as life, is constantly pushing us towards the highest good of all. Sometimes through what we call darkness, and sometimes through what we call light. Sometimes it's uncomfortable, sometimes it's comfortable. Sometimes there is pain, sometimes there's lightness, sometimes there are great epiphanies, and sometimes it's just anguish, but it is all leading us back home into the truth of who we are. That is something that I really believe in, and it has made it so much easier for me to embrace the darkness that is. You cannot live life without any darkness. You cannot live life without uncomfortable moments and all sorts of pain and frustration and you know uh, relationships that are shaking, and the ground is shaking under our feet sometimes. We cannot go through life without that. But knowing that the darkness and the light wants the same thing makes it so much easier to embrace life in any form. Think, okay, so this is what we do now. Okay, I can deal with that. I
Mm,
know that there's a divine intention of goodness behind
mm,
everything.
mm,
So I will allow whatever needs to happen, and I
mm,
will surrender into
mm,
that,
mm.
knowing that in a few moments light will return. Yeah.
It's immensely wise what you speak of, and it's something that I've met many times in my own
Mm,
existence. And it's certainly something that I see in the world. So I try to hold myself in balance as I move through the world, because it seems that I'm called, in this forthcoming weekend, I will be in Gaza running a peace workshop for the UN. And in those situations, I'm there as a servant of the light, embracing all that you say. And one of the things that I'm interested in is how, through what can be traumatic or what can be
mm,
fear, fear-based, what can be all-consuming as we go into that space of darkness, into the wilderness, is how we can remain steadfast,
mm,
grounded somehow, or secure in all things. All conditions are temporary. This will pass, this will pass, this will pass. But I
mm,
must go into this, and I must relinquish, because what you've just shared with us is very beautiful, but actually
mm,
that's a review of the experience rather than when one's in the experience.
mm, mm,
And it's an
mm,
extraordinary reminder that the divine should choose to divide into two for the joy of becoming one again.
Mhm.
So that all of this, um,
Mm.
when you look into the face of the terrorist,
Mm.
what process do you use to draw all of that process, all of that feeling, all of that intelligence into divine light?
Hmm. Just love. And I know it sounds ridiculously banal and simple, but I I don't see evil. I see a lot of pain. And when I see the face of a terrorist or the face of anyone who may be committing something horrendous,
Mm,
what I see is so much pain.
mm,
And what I also see when I when I look through the eyes of my heart, and that is what I do in situations like that, I I do everything in my power and with everything I have been giving to move out of my head and into my heart.
mhm,
When I see from the perspective of my heart, I see something very different than what I see from the perspective of my mind.
mm,
Because my heart, my soul recognizes the soul
mm,
of whatever human being is in front of me.
mm,
And I have realized that there is no one that my soul is unable to love.
mm,
There are a lot of people that my mind doesn't like at all. There's a lot of people that scare me, that makes me angry, that makes me frustrated. But when I step into the perspective of my heart,
mm,
I just see the
mm,
soul behind the
mm,
pain that has taken this person so far from who they really are.
mm,
I just see a human being who has completely forgotten who they really are.
mm,
So what I do in those situations is I love them with with all my heart because I um, I believe that maybe if I love them strongly enough, they will begin to remember who they are. I have had experiences like that, but that takes having them face to face. But it also heals me.
mm,
When I step into my compassion for that tormented soul. These are the most tormented souls on the planet. For someone to act like that, you have to be in so much pain, you know? So I can easily find compassion for that.
mm,
And in that state of compassion, uh, my mind calms down.
mm,
I am healed. I
mm,
am not uh, overwhelmed in the same way that I would usually be by my own pain in meeting this. Um, yeah. So yes, and I know this is not as simple as it sounds, but this is this is the capacity I really truly believe that we
mm.
have as human beings. We
Yes.
do have the capacity to step into this place
Mm.
where perspective completely changes. Yeah.
I found, by the way, somebody came to me through the organization that I'm working with, who was one of the hostages taken by
Mm,
Hamas.
mm,
And before being taken, she saw her babe being beheaded, and her mother, um, a can of gasoline was poured over her mother, and she was set light, 85-year-old mother. And then the 24 boys, they were 14, 15-year-old boys, they raped her. And I said, "What is in your heart for them?" She said, "Nothing but forgiveness." forgiveness, nothing but
Yeah.
forgiveness. I knew that this was an extraordinary test that I was being given. And it
Yes.
took me time to calm down from the hysteria that was raging inside me. But
Mhm.
now, these 6 months later now, 7 months later, now I've actually got this extraordinary feeling of stillness inside
Wow.
me.
Wow.
And I feel that this is the token, this is the skill that we need to acquire, isn't
Mm.
it?
Mm.
Face the beauty of this extraordinary prism that you're sharing with us of divine love. That if we can find in these moments the stillness, that automatically we begin to detach from
Mm.
the raging ego of
Mm.
this polarity organ up here,
Mm.
drop deep into our beings, and then
Mm.
suddenly there is a change of circumstance. I mean, this has been shown to us by the prophets, hasn't it? Shown to us by
Mm.
saints, shown to the holy people.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
The way that His Holiness the Dalai Lama will hold himself in the bodhicitta, in divine grace, in divine compassion,
Mm.
and
Mm.
just the love just radiates. But there's
Mm.
nothing sentimental about it, is there?
No.
It's
No. No, because it's actually, it's beyond good and bad.
yeah, yeah.
So it's very unsentimental. It just is. But
Mm,
I also think it's so important that we allow ourselves to be with whatever is, because I see people who are constantly striving to become more spiritual, become more loving, become more, this constantly striving to become more. Um, and I believe that actually it's not about getting there,
mm,
but the way we get there,
mm, mm,
is to stay here, to
mm,
recognize this moment, to recognize these feelings, to allow ourselves to be unforgiving, to allow ourselves to be small, to allow ourselves to be um, have moments where we are lost and we are hateful and we are angry. It is, to me, spirituality is actually really very much about embracing our humanity,
mm,
you know,
mm,
connecting with our spirit, connecting with our soul, with, the perspective of love, to become able to embrace this human being, this
mm,
very, very imperfect human being who will never stop having dark moments. You know,
mm,
I don't think it makes sense to me to aspire to be uh, a, in a constant state of bliss and happiness and outpouring of love, because that is not what being human is. It makes sense to me to connect with that place, to be able to uh, pull from that source when life calls for it, when we need it, when our neighbor needs it,
mm,
when our friends need it,
mm,
our enemies need it.
mm.
But I don't think that we're doing ourselves any favors by striving to become this magic person, who's in constant bliss. I really think we're here to be human.
I'm in complete agreement, by the way. Uh,
I'm
I'm,
glad.
I'm in complete agreement. But two things also that I do believe, the striving, as we've sort of expressed, the doing, is
Mm,
the old paradigm. Striving, doing. No, we don't end up, it's the destination just gets further and further and further away.
mm,
And Alexander of the Alexander technique, Matthias Alexander, had this wonderful way of describing cease the ends gained and work for the means whereby. So we're living in each holy instant and
mm,
living life to the full. And then,
mm,
of course, the path finds us. We don't need to seek the path. the path literally finds us. But it feels to me that something very remarkable is happening within the evolutionary capacity of we humans at this time, and that we're moving from that Homo sapien intelligence of being bewildered by our intellects because our emotional bodies aren't as balanced as they could be, or aren't as discovered as they could be, or aren't as penetrated as they could be, so that we can move into a level of what you're talking about, I believe, which is a wisdom where we feel what you are saying. We know this is an absolute possibility within our humanity, that we can stand astride these two polarities and live the oneness of the stillness. And that all we do really is to find that stillness, and then the polarities literally sort themselves, so that we can then just state or evolve onto a higher level. This, I feel, is what our destiny as Homo sapiens are all about, so that we become Homo luminous. We become the human angels. Um, and I was sort of about 25 years ago, I was given an insight from a non-corporeal point of view. We're working with beings that call themselves ultra-terrestrial, called the Hathors, who came to visit me to give me teaching, which was extraordinary in the honoring of it and in the delicacy, the simplicity, and the extraordinary penetration of it. It was really blew all of my cells apart until I gathered them in, rather like stars. And I remember their parting to me was, we were once in flesh, we were not humanoid, but this was millennia ago. And now we operate through feeling as the language of the soul. And our lowest feeling state is something you call samadhi.
Yeah.
But of course, they were really, although they have an understanding of duality, they observe it from that extraordinary detachment that you were beginning to suggest is a way of seeing this, good or bad does not exist, or brightness and evil do not exist. They're just simply two reflections of an inchoate state of being. The question is, what do you choose? That we're gradually beginning to understand more about how we can solve the doing. Because most of the time, doing what we could be doing, we're doing it for somebody else, and that somebody else will be a phantom in our consciousness. Of all our teachers leaning into us when we were children. If you couldn't do what I wanted you to do, and I couldn't, so I remember that very well. Um, we begin to really resolve those aspects of neuroses that we have that keep us in separation, and then we become whole.
And as you say, it's evolving.
Mm,
I think
mm,
by itself, we are in an evolving universe,
mm,
and I think that a lot of what we're seeing in the world these days are a very clear sign of this
mm,
evolvement.
mm,
Um, we spoke briefly before this about or wrote to each other about this mental crisis
mm,
in the world these days,
mm,
and uh, I really think that we are at a turning point in our uh, evolving. Oh, it's my English that is tricky. Yeah, in our, yeah, um, because for one thing, I really believe a lot of the young people that are being born today, I have children that are 15, 18, 21, and they are here at so much higher level of consciousness than I was that age. So these children, these young people are coming into the world, and they feel the pressure of a world that was not made for human beings, definitely not made for human beings this evolved. as they are. So they are, you know, feeling the consequences of
mm,
being part of a world that is not made for them or not ready for them.
mm,
So there's this turning point, I think, where they are bridging us into something new. They will
mm,
not um, they will not allow
mm,
this world to go on in the way that it is right now. And I think a lot of the mental uh, problems is partly just a consequence of that mismatch between their level of consciousness and the way the world is. But I also think that it is a, you know, it is the old way and the new way sort of colliding, because we have forgotten as human beings that we are part of something infinite greater. We
mm,
have dismissed the idea of God in whatever form, you know, but we have dismissed that, particularly in my part of the world, in Scandinavia, you know, believing in God is something for the very few. So we have dismissed that, and doing that, we come into a position where we are the ones with carrying the whole load of responsibility. It
mm,
is up to us to control, micromanage, you know, our lives and the world and what's going on, and it all comes back to us as individuals, and
mm,
that is such a heavy load to carry.
mm,
We're not meant to carry that kind of load. You know,
mm,
fear to me is defined by um, this feeling of losing control over something that we want to be able to control. And it's
mm,
defined by loneliness.
mm,
At the opposite end of the spectrum from fear
mm,
is knowing God's love,
mm,
knowing God's love, knowing how infinitely small we really are, knowing how much is out of our control, knowing how loved we are, knowing how held we are, you know. And so to me, um, this mental health crisis is moving back into the consciousness of
mm, mm.
knowing love. Um, yeah.
Yeah, I completely cohere with what you're saying. Completely cohere. And although it's my whole life has been dedicated to the alleviation of human suffering, I
Mm,
know at the same time that the wise part of me, the still part of me, the divine part of me, just watches it all and keeps
mm,
breathing as much love and as much illumination when people want to hear into whatever the crisis may be, which
mm,
I speak of it as a pandemic, and the pandemic of a mental crisis,
mm,
mental health crisis, I should say, because of the reasons that you're stating.
mm.
I do believe fundamentally that we haven't forgotten. I believe that we've unremembered. And we're
Yes.
slowly now remembering, because we know that when people are going through an inspirational or desperational route to awakening, that one says a few things and they say, "Oh, but I knew that.
Yes.
Why haven't I been living it? Oh, I've been endorsed by a
Mm,
system. You know, did I take the red pill or the black pill?" As in the Matrix terms, you know.
mm,
Um, but at the same time, there is this glorious revolution that is taking place. I speak of it as revolution simply because it is a renaissance, it is a rebirthing. But
mm,
we are approaching it from a very active point of view, but not from the neuroses of doing, 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 of just being present with the
mm,
moment and
mm,
recognizing that there is this beauty and glory and divinity unfurling within humankind.
mm,
Therefore, we will become kinder people. I do believe earnestly that we will become kinder people. And being born into what we've been born into, because I share with you, and I have, I have a godchild who I'm just in awe of because of her
mm,
beauty. and having seen her grow from the moment when she was a tiny mite and said, "Do you think fairies exist?" And I said, "Well, darling, yes, I do. Shall we go and visit them?" And we would go and actually visit the fairies. And she began to see them. Now, as the 26, 27-year-old that she is, now she's returning to the fundamental faith of how her psyche and her intuition led, how her soul led her. And she's a crystal child, there is no doubt. So she shines like a prism.
Yes.
But that wasn't my role when I was born at the end of the Second War,
Mm-mm.
just 5 years later. I know that I came in as an indigo to make a change.
Mm.
Watching the patriarchy be unbelievably manipulative and saying, no, will not be manipulated, which of course made it very angry. So I received
Mm.
the just rewards of that anger, the unjust rewards.
Mm.
But we're here to make a difference on that level. I'm thinking of one of the first great indigos was Mozart, and when
Mm.
he played whatever symphony, maybe it was his first symphony to Emperor Joseph, when it had finished, of course, the court was so surprised by the quality of the music. This sort of music had never been created before. And, Mozart looked at Emperor Joseph, and Emperor Joseph said, "Too many notes." Mozart said, and everyone is important. It's a typical indigo. And then, of course, was not beheaded, but was castigated for being treasonable. The movements forward. You have a practice that brings you back consistently to these beautiful values that you've acquired, that you've reawakened. Is that
Mm.
true?
Well, I'm not a very disciplined person. I don't sit down every day and meditate for hours, but I do use prayer a lot, but very, very simple heart prayer. Uh, Mainly, it is to me as simple as um, recalling love. You
Mhm,
know, if you are able to uh, feel love, not everybody is, and that can be, um, evolved. Um, but if you are able to recall what does it feel to really love, then that's it. That's it. To just take a second to inhale love. That's it. Breathing love, that is my main practice. To me, breathing is being with God present as love. And that's it. You can do all sorts of rituals and meditate for hours and sit in prayer, and you can, whip yourself, or there are many, many, many ways that people have tried to get into the presence of God, but really, when you take one inhalation,
mm,
recognizing now I am receiving the presence of God.
mm,
Now I am giving the presence of God. That's really it. You don't need to do anything else. Sit with the feeling of love. Breathe God. That's it. Why make it more complicated than that?
Well, this is one of the beauties of the exquisite practice that you have. When I say practice, what I mean is not doing, doing, doing. I mean the way that you embody what you speak, that
Mm,
the words that you speak are a way of colorizing the values and
mm,
allowing them to be more explicit for us. That
mm,
it's obvious that deep within there is this extraordinary stillness within the grace of your being.
mm,
being touched by the divine. And so the simplicity and the purity is just exquisite, because we know that that purity leads into infinity. It is a portal for a greatness beyond anything that we could possibly maintain or create within the material.
Yes.
It is absolutely extraordinary. And of course, as we know, all of the great mystics, all of the great teachers, from whatever faith, whatever discipline, that they've all taught us about this simplicity. And the way that you speak about breath, because obviously I've been teaching breath for 50 years, learning it and teaching it, that if more of us could really tune into the in breath and the out breath and see that we're literally breathing God in, that breath is our soul, inspiration, inspirare, inspirazione, of divine influence, then automatically we will reach a point of healing in the sense of moving back to wholeness,
Absolutely.
living in separation.
Yes.
Early on in the practice of deep dialogues, I had the most extraordinary lady on the panel in the way that you are today. Her name is I'm trying to remember her name. I want to say Cressida, but it's not Cressida. It will come to me. Serena. How could I forget? Serena, Serenity. And Serena, in a very short statement, Serena had been born into a family of a father who was a CIA operative, engaged in mind control experiments, and a mother who I believe was a Satanist. And they both decided that they would deprive this child of love as an experiment to see what happened. And so they did this, and they did this very effectively. And so what happened for Serena was that she discovered a way of creating multiple personalities out of her fractured nature, to the point where when she moved into her early 20s, she had in the area of 350 sub-personalities, and some were dust mites. But of course, her whole psyche was completely fractured. At the same time, she was having out-of-body experiences in meeting divine beings of light in the form of angels and in the Divine Mother, who came to her as Kuan Yin. To cut a long story short, she moved into psychiatric hospital care on a number of occasions because her behaviors were so unusual in the way that they can be with someone who is experiencing schizophrenia and so forth. She was sustained by drugs, but then there was a moment of lucidity where she realized that she needed to find not an old paradigm, but a new paradigm teacher. And so when we ask, of course, we are provided. And she met Lee Carroll, who channels Cryon. And he said, meeting, you need to work with this lady, and pointed to this extraordinary woman sitting in the audience, who became her mentor for 25 years. That's the context. The singular discipline was breathing all of the fragments back into wholeness, breathing all, identifying all of those 360 sub-personalities and breathing them all back into wholeness, and feeling how the beneficence of the Divine Mother was overlighting her all the time with this simplicity of divine grace, divine love, divine grace. Nothing more, just that consistency. And so our breath is miraculous. And of course, we know that it is
Wow.
something
But that makes completely sense to me.
yeah,
That would be
yeah,
the remedy,
yeah.
the healing process for
Yeah.
that. Wow. I just actually learned recently. I saw this teaching by Richard Raw. I don't know if you know him.
Yeah.
No, he's a beautiful American. Um, he's a priest,
Mhm,
but a monk. He's from, I think, from the Catholic Church,
mhm,
but he actually told the story of when Moses went to the mountain uh, to speak with God, where he was given these 10 commandments, he asked God his name. And what God gave him was these 4 letters, uh, which we pronounce as Yahweh. But what they are 4 consonants that do not close your lips or well, there's one more thing I can't remember. But what the point is that what God gave as his name was that's the name of God. Isn't that beautiful? So when we are born, the first thing we do is we say the name of God. And the last thing we do when we die is say the name of God. So there's not much we need to do. We are in constant prayer and constant connection already, right?
It's not the simplicity and the purity is exquisite, is absolutely without doubt, and we feel the grace in what you say. I do believe the only thing that we need to do is to keep reminding ourselves of consistency of this, because we know that living in duality, we switch on and we switch off. You know,
Yes.
we're
Yes.
present with the light as we are now, but there will be at some point in the
Right.
next 5 hours where your eyes will slowly close and you'll move into something called sleep. And during the day, of course, we're constantly blinking. We know that our cerebral cortex is so disturbed by
Mm.
so much stimuli, particularly from
Oh, yes.
that what we're doing is we're just simply getting faster and faster and faster and faster up here. And as a result, inconsistency is growing, it's evolving.
Yes.
And so we can just be consistent. My way of doing this is exactly what you've just said, which is getting people back into flow with their
Mm.
breath through chant.
Mm. Mm. And that is what we are here for. We are here to be reminders for each other.
Yeah,
We are here to remember again and again and again and again. You know,
yes,
that is life. That is life.
yeah.
Being reminders to each other. I need to be reminded constantly. I have to remind myself. I need my dear friends to remind me because I keep forgetting. You know, everything I know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it feels to me, say if this is not appropriate, but it feels to me that you're also someone who spends a lot of time in nature.
I do. I do. I wish I spent more time in nature. I feel a very, very deep longing for nature. Denmark is not a country where we have a lot of real nature. Fortunately, I live right by the sea, so I have the ocean
Mm,
right in front of my house. Um, but all of our nature is cultivated
mm,
by humans. So I really have this longing for
mm,
nature because there's no doubt that that is one of the places we all need to be more to connect with that
mm,
place within ourselves.
mm,
You know, there is nothing, hardly anything like nature to make me, to take me into a state of bliss.
mm,
You know, the beauty of nature,
mm,
a sunrise,
mm,
that the happiest, most glorious moments of joy
mm,
are from nature
mm.
and
Uh,
music
and music.
and music. Yes, but that's the thing. I really, if we are longing to remember more,
Mm,
one of the things I believe we can practice is just to be mindful of every time our hearts respond to anything. You know, every time we feel our hearts being moved by
mhm,
beauty, by music, by
mm,
laughter, by the pleasure of eating something delicious, whatever it is, if our hearts are moved, then God, love, is present in our experience. It's always present, but it is present in our experience. So if we capture those moments, if we recognize them as, oh wow, love itself is present right now. Oh wow, let me stay in this moment just a tiny bit longer. Just breathing it in, just expanding it, capturing, because then it becomes evident that it is everywhere all the time, and that's a way of expanding this portal, so the doors open up more easily.
And you speak much of the heart, and there you are giving us these beautiful gestures of muscularizing and tonifying. For me, the heart is the seat of the soul.
Oh yes, this is the portal.
This is the portal. And isn't it exquisite that it's non-polarity? It's an expression of the all-oneness. I'm sort of guiding us towards what we were talking about in our exchanges via email, and also when we first met before coming into recording, the nature of all-oneness. And I believe that you addressed it very fully when you spoke of aloneness, loneliness, and how loneliness is an indicator that we're not in touch with source. That's why we're lonely, or we feel separated from source. We drop another L in the word alone, we have all one. So we move back into, which sounds like clever semantics, but it moves us back into the all oneness. And I'd love you to address, if you could, because the title of our meeting today is called Embraced by Divine Solace. It's pretty obvious to any of us watching, observing, being with you in these moments, that there is this extraordinary solace within you. But I would like you to address it in a few sentences of what because here you are exchanging with us through this English vibration so beautifully. This is what I so admire about Northern Europe and other parts of Europe, where there is this very easy linguistic with English. I don't speak Danish. I wish I could. It doesn't seem to be appropriate in this particular incarnation for me to speak Danish. I've had many wonderful times in Denmark, and indeed, some leading people from Denmark have sought me out here in my temple nest in London for coaching. But solace, how would you tune solace for us as a melody?
Oh, that's a very good question. It has been interesting for me to experience how the frequency of solace ended up somehow being such an important part of my path. The book I wrote, I didn't know that I had written it. I had just made myself available for the voice of love through years and years, just writing whatever came through. And at one point, my dear friend was going through a very difficult time. And so I went into my computer and said, oh, I think she might benefit from this and this and this and this and this. And I collected it in this tiny little book. And that book has just taken me places I never dreamt of. It just had its own life. And I'm just a passenger for whatever this book wants me to do. And the essence of this book is solace. It is, again, a reminder of how incredibly loved we are. People have no idea how much love there is for them. They um, they are it's no coincidence that we speak of God as Father or Mother, because it is that kind of love. So Book of Solace is basically just a reminder of that love. So solace to me is about being reminded
Mm,
that no matter what life looks like,
mm,
no matter how bad you have messed up, no matter how um, ugly you feel, you are so loved. So solace is the reminder of that you cannot. Uh, there are no mistakes, and you are not a mistake. You are a loved child, and no matter how you go through life, this love is with you always, always, always. It is what you came from. It is what you will return to. You know. Um, so solace is that is in on my darkest days, when 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 it's just too hopeless or too painful to even try and pray. What I do is just I lean in, I go under my duvet, my blankets, I curl up, and I just uh, re-enter this state of just being a fetus in God's womb. That is solace to me. I don't need to be anything. I don't need to perform anything. I don't need to, I can just let it be and surrender, and trusting that light will return as it always does. Mm.
beautiful. Wow. Beautiful. Beautiful. There's such comfort in what you speak, what you share, what we feel from you. And I'm intrigued. I had intended to. I love words, and I'm interested in the etymology of the word. Where did this come from?
Mm.
And I wanted to be a bit more studious with this word and go into my book of wonders
Mm.
to find out what its etymology is. And I didn't have time to, because before coming to see you, I received an emergency call from someone that I needed to be with. Um, and so I will now go. But of course, it's interesting. The two syllables are sol ace, sol being the sun. So we're
Mm.
reminded of the solar deity. We're reminded of the male presence within the center of our universe. And the
Mm.
ace is all about being at one with the divine. So we have this
Wow.
extraordinary balance where we are completely held in the
Yeah.
supreme and supernal love, as you describe it, of this extraordinary wonder, which is
Yes.
what for me, this wonder. I'm in awe of its wonder. It has always been there for me as a child. I saw the multidimensional universe. I couldn't understand what the adults were talking about within the known world, within the seen world,
Mm.
because it's all of this, and that they couldn't see it. Why were they getting so angry and frustrated? And why were the other children running around beating one another? It just seems
Mm.
so extraordinary. The egoic competitions that we get caught up, because the wonder was always there. And that's why I've always sought it, which is why theatre initially, well, firstly God, of course, and through religion, the ritual, the
Mm.
litany of the
Mm.
Mass. Although I was brought up a Protestant, I had to get involved in the ritual
Mm.
and nearly became a priest, and then thought, no, 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 it's the ritual of theatre. I have to get involved in the ritual of theatre,
Mm.
and practice that for most of my life until it was necessary to move away because of the extraordinary process that societies are going through, the
Mm.
devolution process. Because of
Mm.
course, and that level of entertainment, whether it be film or stage, is a mirror for life. And if we are to go through the devolution process, theatre reflects it. And I was seeing nothing but ego on the stages rather than the great truth that I was born into as a young actor, and had the most amazing experiences of working with some of the great actors of the 20th century
Mm.
who such extraordinary human beings who were kind and generous and extraordinary in their genius. So they allowed me to see the portal into wonder.
Yes.
So I will go further into the wonderful blanket of solace.
Yes. And I would love to hear what you find out, because to me it was just such a beautiful word. So
Yeah, yeah,
I grabbed it. And I just must say I love how you bring wonder and awe into this, because those two words are really truly also at the essence of um, my experience of being in the world, seeing the world from the perspective of the heart.
yeah,
There is wonder and there is awe. That is that is the language of the heart. Wonder is truly recognizing God, recognizing love in
yes,
everything, you know.
yes, yes,
And it is when you step out of your mind, forgetting everything you know, stepping into the stillness of the heart and just experiencing the world as if it was for the very, very first time. Experiencing the world as a child, you know, not knowing that that would be called a tree or a butterfly or the smell of a rose. It's just pure, you know. I love that.
It's pure delight being with you and speaking with you, and I want to thank you from the core of my being, from the depth of my soul and the bottom of my heart for being here with us. I know that many people will be healed by what you have shared with us, and will certainly be illuminated, you know, into the simplicity of purity. Um, so don't forget Anja's Book of Solace, Love and Light for Dark Days.
Mm.
And Ryan, if you could put, oh, there we are. Here's Anja's website, so you can go and glory in her further in all of the joy and the delight, because as you can hear, truth, goodness, and beauty just pours from you. The three keystones of Western enlightenment, you know, in its purity, truth, beauty, and goodness. So bless you. We're going to have to finalize or complete our conversation on this level. I hope there will be many more.
I do too. Thank you so much for inviting me. It was truly delightful and wonderful and just a blessing to be with you. Thank you so much.
It's my absolute pleasure. And I know I'm speaking for you, ladies and gentlemen. I know it's been your pleasure as well. So please do send your comments. Tell us how you felt through this wonderful journey that we've been on for this hour. And I know that Anja and I both say to you, namaste, namaste, namaste. Thank you, Ryan. Do stay where you are.